The tarnation of flames roared even louder as it consumed the propane tanks that were housed in the inferno of Jim's unit. The conflagration began making its way up the stairs and would be knocking on my door within minutes. Jody was extremely apprehensive about having to jump and fear risking bodily harm and injury to escape the incoming holocaust and doom. "Blake, grab as much ammo from the closet as you can and throw it down," I commanded. In a world gone mad where the veneer of society is now extremely thin, it was imperative to rescue and liberate as much of our personal protection as possible. Everything I owned was stored in ammo cans and ammo crates, easy to carry and secure enough to survive a 14-foot fall down to the ground. Equipped with firearms with empty chambers and unfilled magazines, we wouldn't survive this mass disaster, in a world now overrun with grade A sociopath predators. "I can't do it," Jody shouted. "I can't jump." She was frozen in fear. When people feel their life is in jeopardy, they often suffer from dissociation. A trance-like state, a lot like being hypnotized. I knew I was going to have to go up and get her. My work van was furnished with a 28-foot extension ladder, more than enough length to reach my balcony. I told Jim if the unconscious vandal comes to and so much moves, put a bullet between his eyes. Glancing down at the limp, disabled body, I noticed the ill-fitting knockoff imposter police uniform. It confirmed that this was indeed the unsavory and repulsive rovers that ran rampant on Blake's family. On second thought, Jim, shoot to wound, not to kill. I need to interrogate him. I chose not to immediately inform Blake of the demon's identity, as his mission of extracting supplies was far too important to interrupt. Time was not on our side as the menacing and robust blaze continued to scorch forward. I raced over to my van that had now sat idle for over 3 weeks. I unhitched the handle for the ladder rack and quickly lifted and lowered down the Werner ladder, ignoring the surplus of snow that crashed down off of it and completely covered my head and face. I quickly positioned the ladder on my right shoulder, as I had done tens of thousands of times before society had disintegrated into barbarism and inhumanity. "Hold on, Jody. I'm coming to you," I hollered out. I hastened through the knee-high snow and past the potent and fierce fire, dodging the ammo cans Blake was heaving from the heavens above. I positioned the ladder and began pulling the frozen rope to extend it past the height of the railing that surrounded my balcony. I then jumped on the first rung to help the feet of the ladder submerge through the snow and make contact with the frigid and frosty ground. At that exact moment, the extreme, fiery heat of the inferno broke through the melting glass of the entry door to our building, allowing the wind to feed more oxygen to the fire and helping it to grow even further powerful and perilous. The blazing tornado of heat and toxic carbon monoxide gas scorched forward, making contact with my apartment door, and immediately incinerated my footwear that sat outside my unit. Smoke was now visible inside as it retreated out through the ajar sliding glass door and disappeared into the dingy doomsday of darkness. I raced up the ladder and jumped off onto the hazy, smoke-filled balcony, immediately helping the panic-stricken and overfraught frame of Jody onto the ladder so she could descend to safety. "Blake, we gotta go, brother," I called out. "I haven't even dented your ammo supply," he said. "There's no time," I replied, as the smoke was burning both my eyes and lungs. "We can grab more," he argued. He was being stubborn and bullheaded, perhaps out of fear for what this unknown and wicked world had in store for us in the future. I knew how to get him to obey my command to evacuate. That thug Jim took down is dressed exactly how you describe the demonic group that terrorized your family. He's one of them. "I'll kill him. He's mine," Blake muttered. He instantly made his exit from my dark, hot, murky apartment and began to plummet down my ladder. I grabbed my bug-out bag, or my good bag, get out of Dodge, or my inch, I'm never coming home again, whatever you want to refer to it as, that I kept positioned by my door. I never imagined I'd be fleeing like this. An out-of-control, raging abyss of hell, consuming and ingesting all my preps. I had gone from having vast stockpiles of food, water, medical, bullets, and everything else I intended on surviving Judgment Day with, to now only having the clothes on my back, a handful of weapons, and whatever ammunition we were able to extricate. I was now a refugee in a world without rule of law. Vulnerable, exposed, and beyond exhausted in a society that had gone mad. As bad as things looked and felt, I was extremely grateful to still be alive 350 hours in a full-on civil collapse. Any situation you walked away from alive and unharmed was considered a win in the treacherous apocalypse. Jim and Jody were alive, but I was still overwhelmed with a feeling of guilt. I had an opportunity to terminate the firebombing vandal before he released a satanic, incendiary device that decimated our sanctuary of safety during SHTF. I took one last look at the place I had called home and retreated down the ladder before the firestorm engulfed my unit. Blake was already assaulting and clobbering the torpid thug that lay powerless on the ground. Repeated kicks to the ribs and hammer punches to the face that was already missing multiple teeth from the potent blow Jim had delivered to him. "Easy, Blake," I yelled. "He's no use to us if he's dead. He may have critical information we can use to our advantage. There's still one terrorist at large. He could be back at your place, or he could be here, stalking us, so everyone stay alert and don't let your guard down." The vigorous blows delivered by Blake had awoken the once incapacitated goon. His swollen eyes slowly opened, and Blake immediately hawked a nasty, unpleasant loogie that landed directly into his right eye socket. "I thought I killed that asshole that connected with my face. I thought I was home free and hopping on our snowmobiles to hightail it out of here," Brandon muttered. I hadn't even begun to interrogate him, and he already let us know there were snow machines nearby. "Is my wife alive?" Blake roared out. With a crooked and shattered smile, he said, "Wouldn't you like to know? She had been having the time of her life putting out for us." Before he could continue taunting Blake, I dropped down to a knee and shoved the barrel of my Glock directly into his mouth and asked him if he was ready to die and go to hell. He began to mumble and squirm as he whispered, "You may have won the battle, but the sinners of society will win the war." "Sinners of society? What's he talking about?" Jody asked. "You see, the original 4 of us that showed up at that house are part of a much bigger group. We rob, we loot, we rape, we kill. We are SOS, the sinners of society. You can kill me, but you can't kill all of us. We will rise, we will reign, and we will rule this new world, and there's not a goddamn thing anyone can do to stop us," as he began to wail like a banshee. Blake had heard enough and pressed the barrel of his AR firmly on the thug's forehead, executing the predator and ending his existence in this dystopian world. "Do you think he was serious and being truthful about that sinner stuff?" Jody frantically questioned. She was already beside herself and frenzied in fear from the near-fatal ambush attempt. "Where will we go? Where will we live? We have no food or water. We're all going to die," she hysterically cried. "Jimmy, do me a favor," I called out. "Take Jody and do a quick perimeter search for those sleds. I've got an idea," I said. If anyone could calm her nerves, it was her significant other. By now, I was beginning to think Jody would never be able to emotionally accept this evil and vicious way of life we were now forced to live. "What's the plan?" Blake asked. "If we can find those snowmobiles, we strip down these 2 deceased corpses, don their imposter law enforcement uniforms, dress up one of them in your clothes, and roll up to your house impersonating them, and catch whoever is still holed up there by surprise. By now, the vivacious flames had penetrated my apartment door, and the entire two-story structure was fully engulfed and roared to life. Help me gather these ammo cans and we'll throw them in the back of the F-150. Would you look at that, Blake said. This is my .308 and my semi-auto AR they were armed with. The bastards came after me using my own firearms. Once we take back my residence and rescue Jennifer, the three of you are staying with us, Blake commanded. I could tell by the tone of his voice it wasn't an offer, but more of an order. There was power in numbers, and as we've learned, security is first and foremost in everything now. The two of us rapidly recovered the priceless and invaluable ammunition and quickly turned our attention to the two departed and slaughtered sinners. Swiftly removing their blood-soaked uniforms and checking their pockets for the keys to the sleds. With the keys secured, it was time to dispose of one of the bodies. What should we do with the extra body, Blake asked. Give me a hand. We'll toss him into the hellscape of fire and cremate his corpse, I answered. I grabbed his arms and Blake grabbed his legs. We got as close to the raging inferno as possible before the intense heat began to sting and burn our skin. On the count of 3, we hurled the naked body of evil into the front of our building and instantly heard the sound of his skin sizzle. Throughout the entirety of the battle, Blake remained barefoot, and I feared his frostbitten feet had suffered even more damage. We've got to get some protection on those feet of yours, I uttered. I gave him both pairs of socks we plundered off the sinners, and his size 11 foot had plenty of room in the size 12 Timberlands we removed from the first body. The second pair of boots we kept and threw in the back of the truck. He removed his ragtag battered, bloody and holy clothes in the frigid and polar temperatures as I stood guard. Once he was fully dressed in the still ill-fitting knockoff uniforms, I did the same while he watched my 6. Jim returned with Jody, still in her brittle and frail mental state, having located the pair of snow machines over on the other side of the complex. Surprised to see us sporting the clothing of the black-hearted and unrighteous rovers, he knew what our intent was. Worried about the possibility of having to hotwire the Ford F-150 we had loaded up with the ammo in my bob bag, I asked Jim if there was any chance he had the keys to our primary bug-out vehicle on him. By now, there was no chance to retrieve anything left behind in the tsunami of rip-roaring flames. The maintenance man in him had made sure they were attached to his retractable key holder that was fastened to his belt loop. I've got him right here, as he extended the key holder outward. Great, I replied. You and Jody load up the truck and hole up about a half mile down the street from Blake's house, while he and I march forward on the sleds and prepare for our bloody encounter. Once we are successful in butchering the final beast and clearing the house, we'll radio you two, letting you know it's safe to proceed. Where's the other body? Jody hesitantly asked. He's searing inside. I'm making sure his meat and bones are cooked extra well done, I answered. What about this one here? As she pointed down to the slaughtered carcass, furnished in Blake's blood-stained clothes. That's our Blake decoy that we're going to drag behind one of the snowmobiles. We'll ride up to the front yard and do continuous loops, hooting and hollering, hoping to draw out the last remaining homicidal monster. Once he's in the crosshairs, we'll extinguish him before he even discovers he's been ambushed. As the conflagration of flames continued to rage and light up the horrific and nightmarish apocalyptic night, Blake and I set off to recover the 2 snow machines a few hundred yards away. Shoulder to shoulder, we slogged through the snow in silence until he asked me, "You think my wife is alive?" "I know she is," I answered. "If she's anything like you, she's as tough as nails, brother. I'll never get to walk my daughter down the aisle. There will be no father-daughter first dance. They took my baby girl from me with no remorse and laughed about it. They stole her virginity. She was still a child. Her cold corpse is still laying out back, exposed and on display for my wife to have to see. Promise me this, Brian. You, under no circumstance, massacre this last monster," He's all mine. I'm going to torture, torment, and make this piece of trash suffer, so help me God, if it's the last thing I do. You have my word, Blake. He's all yours. I'll tow the decoy, and you decapitate the demon.